Hey guys, welcome back for CCUtech Training's video number 6. Today we're going to take a couple minutes to talk about equalizers. Alright, cool. So equalizers are one of the main tools used by audio technicians, whether you're running front of house or monitors or mixing down in post-production or anything like that. It's an extremely powerful tool that allows you to shape the timbre of instruments or voices or, whatever. So what is an equalizer? My definition of equalizer is a gain control for a specific set of frequencies. Let me say that one more time, and I'll write it down so to make sure that you get it. So it's a gain control for a specific set of frequencies. So basically what that means is you guys know that at the beginning of any signal chain you have a gain control. And what that does is boost the level of an input so that it's usable throughout the rest of the console while you're adding DSP and then mixing and sending out. What an equalizer does is it does that same thing. It's a level control, but only for a certain section of the input. So instead of adjusting the overall level, it only adjusts the highs or the lows or the mids or a certain section or a combination of those. So we'll go ahead and dive on in. Just so you guys kind of have an understanding, the most basic equalizer that probably every person in America has used, you'll find in your car, right? So on your car, you have that little 2-band EQ that says treble and bass, and all of the high school thugs crank the low end and make their terrible, crappy Camrys sound like rattling tuna cans. But that is adjusting frequencies independently from one another. So when you turn up that bass, it's adding gain, but only in the low end section of the radio. So that's basically what an EQ does. Every EQ is going to have 3 main parameters. The first one is gain. Big surprise there. Gain is basically adding or taking away. Most every equalizer can add and take away gain. That's called an active EQ. There are such things as passive EQs that are only capable of taking away, but we're not really going to talk about those today. So gain is where you add or take away level. Cool, the next one, frequency. Important to know. So frequency is measured in hertz. The human ear can hear roughly 20 to 20,000 hertz. Don't go measure yourself because it's probably going to say that you can only hear 16,000 hertz and then you're going to cry yourself to sleep. It's okay. Most people actually can't hear up to 20,000 hertz. That's like a dog whistle. But frequency is basically where you're selecting the section of the input that you want to adjust the gain on. So if you want to adjust the sibilance in somebody's voice, you might adjust the top end. So you're going to select frequencies like around 10,000 hertz and higher. If you want to select the thump of a bass drum, you might go down to 80 hertz and select that. We've talked about that in other videos, some fundamental frequency ideas. But frequency is basically the parameter that allows you to select the section of the input you're adjusting. All right, so you're going to find those two on most any equalizer. We're going to talk about the kind of types that you'll see later. This last little parameter is what's called Q, and Q is present on just about every type of equalizer, but it's not always adjustable. The main place you're going to find adjustable Q is on what's called a parametric equalizer, which is what we're using most of the time at CCU. Q adjusts the width of what is called the band. So it's important to understand that on a parametric equalizer and some other equalizers, when you're adjusting these parameters, you're adjusting it for a selected band. And all that means, a band is just another term for the group of frequencies that you're adjusting. Let me just go ahead and preface with the idea that it is impossible, well, pretty much just impossible, to adjust just a singular frequency. Like, it's impossible just to adjust 1127 hertz. And that's due to acoustics and harmonics and all of that. And And so when you're on a parametric equalizer and you're trying to adjust it, you'll see that when you add or take away gain, not only are you adjusting just that one frequency, but you're adjusting the frequencies around it. Q adjusts the width, so it adjusts how many frequencies on either side of that set frequency you're adjusting. If you have a really wide Q, and say you're adjusting 500 hertz and you have a super wide Q, you could be adding a little bit of gain or taking away a little bit of gain all the way up to 1,000 hertz or even higher. If the Q is super narrow, say for like a notch filter or something like that, it's possible that you wouldn't even be adjusting 530 hertz. And that's a beautiful thing. When you're notching for choir mics or trying to ring out a room, it's wonderful that you can adjust the Q and make it super slim so that you're only adjusting a few number just a small number of frequencies. Inversely, it's nice if you're trying to just add some presence or add some low end overall, that you can have a really wide Q that allows you to adjust multiple frequencies. So we can talk about that a little more in depth. For right here, we'll just go ahead and say width of the band. Okay, if you guys have any questions about that, you know where to contact me at. Next on, we're just going to talk about the 3 different kinds of EQs that you might run into. The first one is right here. This little guy is what you would find on old analog consoles of the day. You probably can't see that right now. Let me adjust the camera. All right, so now that you can see it a little bit better, this, I probably didn't move it that much at all. Anyways, this is what you would see on analog consoles back in the day. So analog consoles were basically channel strips that were just repeated over and over and over again. And on that channel strip, you would find an EQ section that just kind of had like low, mid, high. They are set bands and frequencies most of the time, set Qs. All you can adjust is the gain. Clockwise adds gain, counterclockwise takes away gain. So I call that a set band equalizer. I'm not sure what the exact term is. Some of the old guys might correct me on it. But yeah, sometimes they'll have like a sweepable mid, which means that you can control the frequency of the mid, but usually the high and low bands are set, and what you have is what you got. So the next one over is what's called a graphic equalizer. And any time that you had to do more equalizing is when you would use the graphic. They came usually in like a stereo version that was 2 15-band EQs and a full mono version that was like a 31-band EQ. And what's nice about these is each one of these different little sliders is one frequency. So you can come in and add and take away from that one frequency. Guys will usually use these to shape the overall output of some output on the mixer, whether it's the main bus out or a monitor out or whatever. And lastly here, we have the parametric EQ, which is what we're used to on the Behringer X32 and other digital consoles of the day. You guys have no idea how lucky you are to have a parametric EQ and compressor and gate on every single channel. Back in the day when we were doing analog, it was insane to even think that was possible. But a parametric EQ is wonderful because it allows you to independently adjust these 3 parameters for multiple bands. Like on our X32, we have 4 whole bands for every single input and 6 bands for every bus and mix out. So that's huge. That's really, really huge. Parametric is definitely the most adjustable out of all of them, the most transparent, most likely. And you see them used in every aspect of audio, from tracking in the studio to post-producing to front of house and monitors, all that stuff. Moving on. This is my favorite part. I get to rip the page off. That was fun. Cool. So the last thing we're going to talk about just briefly are the types of bands that you'll see on the parametric EQ that we're used to using. There are 3 main types. The first one is what is called a shelf band. And a shelf band is awesome and terrible at the same time. A shelf band basically allows you to select a frequency, and then when you add or take away gain, every frequency above or below that certain frequency is what is being adjusted. So if I select 10,000 hertz and it's a high shelf, that means that 10,000 hertz and everything above 10,000 hertz is going to be adjusted by that gain, addition, or subtraction. Inversely, if I have a low shelf and I select 100 hertz, that band is then going to adjust everything below 100 hertz when I add or take away gain. So basically, you have one frequency and gain then adjusts all above or below. Above or below. All right, the next one is what's called a bell. And it's kind of self-explanatory. It looks like a bell. So instead of having a set frequency where everything above is used, you have a frequency that's in the middle, and then the Q adjusts just the number around it. So adjust the width of that bell. So if you were to make something, it would look like this. This is the set frequency in the middle here, as you can see. Let me draw it a little bigger up here. If this is our equalization line, say we have a set frequency right here that we're adjusting, we add a little bit, it's going to come up like this and then slow it back down. Actually, be like right here. This is a bell EQ, and it can go up or it can go down. This is the frequency, and then the Q, when you adjusts this width here. So that would be a pretty wide Q. If I wanted a tighter Q, might look just like that. See how much tighter that is. Yeah, so that's a bell. So frequency adjusts center. And gain adjusts up and down. Pretty easy. And then the last one is cut. And cuts are commonly used. You have low cut, high cut, all that stuff. And basically, you set a frequency, and everything below that is gone, or everything above that is gone. Pretty self-explanatory. So, yeah, used pretty commonly on most inputs. But anyways, that's about all for our equalizers today. If you guys have any questions, as always, send me an email to tanner.daniels@ccuuniversity.edu. Thanks. Bye.